to, the meeting is recorded by HCAM. Is that? Yeah.
Yes, so you'll be able to see it.
Okay. All right, so we are going to go ahead and start. So just going to ask, just so that everybody is aware, we are going to call the meeting to order. So good evening and welcome to our regular school committee meeting on September 2nd. We have just returned from an executive session in the back room. And at this time, we are going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I would invite anyone who's here and would like to stand to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So it's great to see a good crowd here. So we are going to start off. Is there anybody who is here to make a public comment? If you would like to make a public comment, I know we have some recognitions as well, but if you'd like to make a public comment, now would be the time to come up and do so. Okay. All right. So if seeing no public comments, then I would go ahead, Dr. Kavanaugh, and invite you to start with our recognitions.
Okay, so we'll start with our middle school students tonight. And I think what I'll do is just ask your advisor, Mrs. Allen, come on up. And there's a seat over here with a microphone so you can be heard. And you can sort of direct this presentation, and when you're ready for me to play that video, I'm happy to do it.
That would be great.
Okay. And you can introduce your team and all of that. While she's doing that, I will tell you anecdotally just a very quick story. Your notebook, you don't know this, but there was a day last year we had a professional learning day, and I was in the middle school visiting with one of the teams. And our meeting was sort of ending, and in came Mrs. Allen, and she said, "You've never seen anything like this before." And we started to look at your notebook, and even before any of this happened, we were amazed at your work while it was still sitting in Hopkinton Middle School. So
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yep, I was going in to go speak to some of my colleagues to show some of the science teachers, and you happened to be there. So of course I take every opportunity to brag about my students, who are all amazing. This is just 5 of the many students that are fantastic. And the Titans, actually they brought their notebook. If anybody wants to kind of flip through it, feel free to do that. You want to just hand it over here? There you go. It's really impressive. And this team, the Titans, we participate in something called VEX Robotics. Our students are scheduled every Thursday. Obviously with the pandemic, we had to change things up a bit. We were able to get a number of fields to students' houses. We were able to distribute a lot of supplies to them as well. They do a great job respecting the equipment that we have for them. And normally I have over 100 students with 14 teams that I work with. And last year, though, because of the pandemic, it was down to about 35, 40 students who were actively participating, and 6 teams, 3 of which qualified for the World Championship. So I think what the most exciting thing is that through everything that was happening, the robotics students were persevering and demonstrating, what they were passionate about, still staying as active as they possibly could, and working really hard, and it demonstrated in their notebook and in their robot, which they have today. So they actually won a World Championship trophy. And I do have a short video about what that means, because I think that this is the first time, I think any of our teams, correct, Mr. Scott, any of our teams have come home with this type, the Excellence Award. 2 years ago, we did receive a STEM Research Project World Championship Award as well. So we sort of have 2 things under our belt, which is fantastic. And it demonstrates how wonderful the middle school students are that I get to work with. So I would like to give the young men, they don't know that they're getting these, but I had some short little replicas done for you guys. So I'll introduce them, and they can come on up and get their trophies as well. So Jacob Dold. And these, they're all Doug's now. Thank you. welcome. Akshay Jana. And Raghav Jivanantham. Yeah, and Kezar is the one who pretty much handled the notebook, correct? I mean, some other people put some stuff in there, but he spearheaded that notebook. So if you want to play that video, it will show you a little bit about what this award means in the VEX community.
Bob, I don't know if we have volume.
President and CEO of VEX Robotics, Tony Norman, along with co-founder and CTO of VEX Robotics, Bob Mimledge.
The Excellence Award is the highest honor bestowed in the VEX Robotics competition. The recipient of the award is a team that excels in many areas and is committed to quality in everything that they do.
From their engineering notebook to programming skills, to building and driving their robot, they strive for greatness. Their VEX Robotics program exemplifies dedication, devotion, hard work, and their team is a shining example to the entire VEX community.
Bob and I are proud to announce the following recipients of the 2020-2021 Excellence Award.
And
The
the
Mars
excellent
Division Excellence Award winner is Team 1715T, the Robo-Hillers from Hopkinton, Massachusetts. They finished 4th in their division here, and their organization has been involved in robotics for many, many years, although this team is only 2 years old.
So that was a Twitter post, so it was a short little post, but and they actually did bring their robot, if you would like to see it.
Yes, please. You want to bring it up?
Yeah.
Great, so we can get it on camera too.
Up to you. You can put it on the floor, or you can put it up here. It's up to you. Yeah, no, try not. And VEX Worlds, actually, we compete against teams all over the United States and the world. So we're talking about teams from China, Sweden, all Central America, South America. We met teams from, oh my gosh, Australia, just France, all over the world. Thousands of teams compete in VEX.
So this is just going to be a quick demonstration of some of the things we can do. Some of the main things.
Yeah.
Along with this, we also worked hard in programming the robot in autonomous. And at Worlds, we were able to get 71 points in autonomous. And for driving, we were able to get 140. So that gave us 4th in our division.
Yeah,
That was great.
really impressive. Excellent. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have to ask what grade you guys are in now, because this is high level.
We're right now in 9th grade.
Okay.
They're mine now.
Yeah. They get to work with the metal and the soldering and the, yeah. But I got some others coming up your way, so, yeah. Anyway.
I love this whole thing so much. I used to be involved way longer in first robotics, and so I totally understand how much discipline and organization that notebook represents, and the thought that you put into that, in the fact that you actually committed to the design and engineering process is huge. Obviously it produced a great product, and you learned so much. I'm like just blown away. Great work. It really is wonderful.
Excellent.
So I am actually in the economy section of the R&D for the company I work for, and I'm a scientist. And I love your notebook. Like, that notebook is something that you might see from PhD engineers working at my company. It is a beautiful, beautiful example of science and very careful note-taking. So thank you so much, and I'm so excited for you, and I can't wait to see what you do in high school.
Yeah, well, all the credit goes to Kesar.
Yeah.
'Cause
I could see your smile from over here, by the way. His eyes were lit up.
Such an honor to be part of this program. I'd like to thank Ms. Nell, especially for
Oh.
the guidance.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. These are like my kids, right? So we have a lot of fun in robotics, and it's chaos, but you are all welcome to visit if you'd like. And it's a great program, and we're very, very happy that it exists. And Doug, as a mentor at the high school, has been really supportive of the middle school program as well. Thanks, guys. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've done us all proud.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Keep it up.
fantastic.
So shall I leave this here, or do you want to? Would you like to bask in its glory for a little bit? You know you want to. Good job, guys.
I know.
Hard acts to follow the rain.
So next we have Lauren and Nicolette. Do you ladies want to come up and talk a little bit about, do you want Mr. Scott to come with you, or you'd run your show yourself?
This over there.
So I will let you take it from here. You can talk about, these two young women have actually earned a patent on, as freshmen in high school. So it's pretty amazing, and I'll just let you run with it.
So our project was to create a invention that solves a problem for our local police department. And we found, after talking with a member of the police department, that their flashlights would sometimes run out of battery in late night shifts, and it would be difficult for them to either replace the batteries or like switch them out in the middle because they might be doing something important.
Right, so we decided that the best way to solve their problem was to make a flashlight with 2 batteries on the inside that you could just switch between with a switch. It makes it much easier because you don't have to carry batteries with you, and we thought it would make their lives a lot easier.
So we submitted it in the Massachusetts Invention Convention sponsored by MIT, and we ranked high enough, and we also gained a merit award from them that we moved on to the U.S. National Invention Convention. And from there, we also won a finalist award, and we won a sponsorship for a patent, and that brought us to Worlds. Unfortunately, we didn't win anything at Worlds, but we were up against some pretty great inventors, and it's pretty crazy that we made it to Worlds in the first place.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of those inventions that you hear about and you're like, why didn't I think of that? Like, how many times we run out of battery in a
Exactly.
flashlight? Fantastic work.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting because it was something that I hadn't thought about, but with LED flashlights, the bulb doesn't dissipate with the battery, it just goes out. And apparently this was a big problem with the police department. So it started out as a class project, and like the inventors said, it went on from there. And it kept going to globals, and then someone asked at one point, like, what are they going to do next? And I said, intergalactic, I don't know. They went from, class to states to nationals, and then they went to the globals, and it was very, very impressive. And I will say that I use them as an example to the students that I have in class now today, because during the pandemic, they would send files and different things to have done on the printers. I'd put them out in a box outside, a lockbox, and they were gone within 30 minutes. I'd text them or call them, and they'd come bang right down and get everything and run off and go home and work on it. And there's no surprise to why they've been successful. They have a tremendous work ethic, and they really dug into the project and did a great job with it. And it's just a great partnership between us and the police and the fire department as well. And it's been a good partnership to continue those projects. So did a great job. So I'd like to present them with a keepsake. They didn't win globals, but you're going to remember that you were there. For Lauren, and then also for Nicolette.
Thank you.
A little keepsake. But did a fantastic job, and we're super proud of them. And as sophomores, I mean, it's just amazing I don't know what you're gonna do next, but you're gonna do something, I guarantee it. Yeah, so pretty good.
So which class is this?
The honors engineering class, yeah. So we're partnered up with the Lemelson MIT program, and we do projects where we invent, the students invent, and they try to work with people in the community. So we do a project with the police and fire, which I'll give Tom Poirier a shout out in the fire department. I don't know if anybody knows Tom, but the whole reason we got this started was Tom was, I'll say this, chastising me for hanging a piece of paper on my door, which isn't allowed. And I said, I'll take this down if you'll do something for us. And he said, what? And I said, you're going to start doing a project with us. And so he joined in. And then once the fire department started doing it, then the police naturally wanted to do it because they're competitive. And then so they've been coming in, and then we do, and Dr. Kavanaugh and Ms. Parson have come in and worked along another one. They've seen that project, but they've also come in, and Mr. Bishop has come in to see when the kids do projects for the fourth graders at Hopkins. They invent toys for the fourth graders. So we do a whole bunch of invention projects. So this is one of them. And these kids really just knocked it out of the park. Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you really also have made us very proud, but that seems like a real safety concern that you've addressed.
Yes, definitely. We're glad that we could do something to help in our community.
Should I get into a marketing kit? Can we buy one of these? Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, we were thinking about it.
Well, they did receive, as part of their prize from the contest, they did receive pro bono work. It's paid for by a national law firm that deals with IP. So they're going to work with the students to process their patent. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
Can I play a video?
Oh, yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lauren Stretche. And I'm Nicolette Benora, and this is our invention, the battery swap.
It's pretty amazing what they've been able to accomplish at 15 years old.
Invention education with the police and fire departments is super special because it allows the students to make a direct connection with police and fire department members in the community. The special part of this program is that students are able to sit down and interview first responders, identify viable problems that exist within their work. They're able to then go through and develop solutions for those problems that they've identified.
This group of students focused on our equipment, specifically the flashlight, which is probably one of the most important tools that we have as a police officer. So I was excited to hear when they were looking for innovations related to the flashlight.
Had to do this live.
They're getting to see how far you can go with something like this. They rocked it, they did a great job in class.
Battery swap is life-changing for officers on late night shifts.
It's simple and easy to use.
And it's very quick when you need it.
It's like 2 flashlights in one.
Lauren and Nicolette participated in the state event, and they ended up winning one of the top prizes at the state level.
For energy, congratulations to Nicolette and Lauren for the battery swap.
Lauren and Nicolette were then invited to participate in the National Invention Convention that's hosted by the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. Lauren and Nicolette came home with one of the top prizes.
This year's Most Energy Sustainable Award, presented by the Alvin Grid Foundation, goes to Nicolette Benora and Lauren Stretche for battery swap.
You guys holding out for more money, or?
Prepare your throats to celebrate and shout in glee because first is Battery Swap, invented by Nicolette Winora and Lauren Strache in the 9th grade from Massachusetts. Props to you.
This is a super accomplishment for Lauren and Nicolette. And it may not have hit them yet as to how big a deal this is, but it is a big deal.
I see this invention becoming mainstream, not only in law enforcement, but in the military and in civilian use. It's an invaluable enhancement to a flashlight. It really is, to have the ability to go beyond what is expected and to know that you have that reserve that you can use when you need it.
I'm very proud of this program, and I'm very proud of the students. I think this is a model program. It's exceptional, and any school district would be, I think, very fortunate to have something like this.
I promise they do speak.
I know, I don't know what happened, because you used to hear the voice.
Super intelligent students and super dedicated. I think it really tremendous leaders in the building by example, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you for coming in too.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
I hope your beginning of school has all, and for all of the students here, has gone well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you kids stand here for a second so we take your picture? With the school.
Super. Yeah, we should get in a picture with both of these groups, don't we?
Ready?
Nancy and
One,
Superintendent.
two. Everybody can look over here. I bet you all. Susan, I bet you. I bet you all. There we go. Thank you.
Can I get a picture of, do you guys want to come up and have your picture taken as well?
She's the same.
Something for everybody to have them stand right in
Oh,
front of
come
us.
right in here.
Yeah, come right in front of us. Right up.
Ready, guys? Okay.
Oh yeah, you should hold your.
Oh, yeah.
Big
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, that's right.
That is
Okay, we'll try to get everybody again. Don't hide behind the big guy. Ready? All right, here we go. Good job. 1, 2, 3. Well done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Right, so are there, if there are not any, yes, I am, but are there any other recognitions before we move on? Right, so then I would like to take our school improvement plans out of order, if the principals don't mind jumping ahead a little bit. I don't know if you guys have a pre-planned order of how you want to present them first. Okay.
We'll work our way up.
Okay. You always know, it's so nice to see you guys.
Yes, it's so nice to be back here at HCAM. It's great to see you. Another school year underway, and it just feels so good to have kids back in the building. It's been a while, and it was kind of emotional. You know, teachers had tears in their eyes to see like a full class, so it was really wonderful. It is, and we work on always improving. What are we going to do to extend our learning, our students' learning? And once again, we partner with all the elementary schools. There are common elements in our school improvement plans, but our plan particularly with Elmwood, just given the close age of our students, the early childhood nature of it, we have a joint school improvement plan, so that is the pre-K to 3 plan. So our goals continued and extended from the prior year. Last year, we did a lot of things that we didn't plan on doing. So while we did a lot of great things, it wasn't necessarily what we thought we would be doing. So some of this will sound familiar to you, because now we can sort of get back to where we really wanted to be. So our first goal does continue to be social emotional learning. So we've had this in our school improvement plan for a number of years, and I don't know if we'll ever be done with it. It's not like you're done taking care of that whole child aspect. We're always learning and extending that. So where we are now, coming back from a pandemic, it's even more critical than it was prior, because we've had children with such vast experiences. And even coming together is new for some of them, and for our level in particular, some of them haven't really left their family or been with other people. So as we work towards social emotional learning, we're talking about opportunities at school, at home, connecting with families, making sure that our population feels welcome, our community is changing. We want to make sure we reflect and balance that in what we do with our students and our families, because we feel that if students develop these social emotional skills, it helps them feel better, feel confident, and as we say at our level, then they're open to learning. If you're feeling good, safe, and secure, your mind is then free to do that exploration, critical thinking, and just move above and beyond so they can win awards such as that and have great ideas. Something that we share with all the elementary schools is a PBIS team, which is positive behavioral incentives and supports. So we were stalled a bit last year at Marathon with this, just with the pandemic. So I will say we're a little behind the other schools, but we are quickly catching up on this. So if we talk about what that looks like with our actions, we're making up very quickly with that time. So as we focus on making sure that staff understand this, what we're doing, as well as with the students, the focus at Marathon for the professional development days, which was just this week. It feels really long ago. 2 days ago, I think it was.
It feels a little longer than that.
It does. So we are ensuring, well, we've always worked on consistency, really tightening it up. What are the expectations when you're in the hall, when you're in the classroom, when you're at the playground? And Elmwood is doing this as well. And we have a matrix that is very clear. What are the expectations no matter where you are in the building? And our expectations at Marathon, we focus on 3 things. Take care of yourself, take care of others, take care of our school. It's very easy for young children to grasp, even our preschoolers. I'm going to take care of me, I'm going to take care of you, and take care of our school. At Elmwood, that transitions to be respectful, be responsible, be safe. And then Hopkins transitions to some other vocabulary and language. So children at Marathon this week came home with a cubby paw, and it was circled with the first one, take care of yourself, to start that conversation of what does that mean. So information will be going out with families in our September newsletter explaining that, but we want the children to be able to say what they did, and same with Elmwood. When they get their little ticket that talks about what they did, part of it is being clear and specific. Not just I did a good job at school today, I did a good job taking care of myself, I kept my hands to myself. That's a really big deal. So we start small so that we can move on to the bigger things. So our PBIS team has been working hard on that. We look forward to having, now that technology is just a part of what we do, having workshops with families, and I think we'll be able to engage more families now via Zoom, whereas in the past when we've had workshops, families express interest, but sometimes just honestly our turnout's been low, and I think that's because families are busy, they have other commitments. And now with the ability to record things sort of on demand, we will be able to share that information with ease and sort of as families need it. So we're looking forward to doing that. And when we look at making sure all children feel well, we have a lot of children with diverse backgrounds. We have a number of children that don't yet know our language. We want them to feel welcome. Children that have great different customs and celebrations to share with each other. So not only are we working on teaching children, you know, take care of yourself, be respectful and responsible, we're also adding in that, look at this great world around us and all these neat, diverse things that maybe are new to you, and how wonderful is that to expand your knowledge with that. And now that we have a director of social emotional learning, that role is really going to help at our level support that adult social emotional learning so that they can then better support themselves to then support children. So it sounds like, okay, we've been doing this for a long time, but it's deeper and it's at a different level than it was a few years ago. So it is different than what we did a few years ago with this.
Well, and I think with all things, you don't realize what people don't know until you start digging into it. So it feels like in some ways we thought we're really doing a great job with SEL, and as we continued to investigate, we realized we need to do a little bit more here and there. So yeah, I'll agree with Lauren. It feels like we've had similar goals on our SIP, but we're getting deeper and deeper into it, and we're realizing there are opportunities all over the place to enhance it. So our second goal is a literacy goal again. And as Lauren said so nicely, we did other things last year to just in response to being in a pandemic. There were so many things academically that needed a shift, and literacy instruction was certainly one of those. So one of the silver linings of a pandemic for the instructional leaders at each of our schools was that they realized very quickly, as we shifted and pivoted and used words that we said we'd never use again, that there was a very strong need for the staff to collaborate. So I think back to 8 years ago when I came to Hopkinton, there are a lot of sort of silos in classrooms where teachers are doing incredible things, but sort of doing them independently of one another. And so one of the things that we realized with the pandemic is that teachers needed to come together and plan. And we created, I believe at all 3 elementary schools, we created curriculum teams where we identified a focused curricular area, the staff came together to plan, and then what the reading team, for example, did was shared out with all the teachers at the grade level, but they became experts with that curriculum and shared it out with their groups. It ensured that students, as they transitioned from fully remote to in school to hybrid and to any of the shifts that happened, it ensured a more viable curriculum for everyone. And the teachers also really appreciated the opportunity to collaborate in an area that maybe they hadn't. And I've heard lots of folks say what they learned last year was really invaluable. So we're going to use the good things that came from last year. We're going to say goodbye to some of the things that we hope, our fingers are crossed, and really embrace some of the good work that we did. We're going to bring that into our PLC work, our professional learning communities. Once again, we're going to focus on data. We realize more than ever that we need to take the information that we get from kiddos every day. Where are they now? Are we suffering from a lot of learning loss because of what happened? Are we on track? And being really specific about where we're at, using the data that we gather from assessments like our benchmark reading assessments and STAR, which are more formal, and also anecdotally. What's going on in our classrooms? Using that data to really strengthen teaching and learning for kids. We're going to use literacy as a tool, as Lauren talked about, the importance of bringing diversity into our classrooms and our work. We've purchased new materials. I don't know how many years ago Vanessa had purchased F&P interactive read-alouds for Hopkins School. And through the work of Deb Moriarty, our literacy, our ELA director, they were able to say, hey, look at these tools. This is something that every child can benefit from. We brought these great libraries into the classrooms and saw these illustrations, these stories, these are opportunities for kids that we really didn't have available to us until then. So we are going to continue to enhance the reading instruction to include those materials and make sure that they're well used by all teams. We will one of the things that teachers are super excited about, and I like Lauren, I had a teacher this week who came down in tears and said she was so grateful to have kids able to sit closer together. So where if you went into a classroom last year for all good reason, they were really sitting in rows at a distance, and there wasn't a lot of interaction. So we're grateful that we can start very carefully interacting with one another, creating academic opportunities in literacy and all things where kids can move about and enjoy some of those more purposeful opportunities and get back to guided reading. So that's an area for us that we felt we were making really wonderful strides with instruction and curriculum, and then that took a back seat when having a small group reading instruction that's targeted for a student and a small group, it wasn't possible last year. So we're going to get back to making sure that our staff feels comfortable with that. Some of our action steps will include that targeted instruction. Shared read-alouds using the F&P materials that we were able to purchase last year. And just getting back to using the data that we collect from our students every day to enhance our instruction. And we're really excited about. And we, like Lauren said, we started 2 days ago, I think it was. And teachers were the first day that we came together, so we came together for the first time, actually physically together. And there was a little hesitancy, are we doing this? And we did. We met in the cafeteria, which was a bigger space for us. But it was really wonderful to be together, to make eye contact, to share ideas, to giggle, and enjoy a snack together too, and start to plan how we're going to roll out the wonderful ideas that we've been putting together. And staff is so excited to be together. So kudos to the teachers who have worked so hard to really did work that I keep saying to my staff, no one's ever done this before. And you did it. And families will say things like, well, look at all the remote students who didn't have school. And I will argue that those kiddos had every aspect of real school except standing in line. And it was very obvious yesterday that that was a skill they had in practice. But now that they're back together, it'll be short work for teachers to get them getting in line.
So in some aspects, the pandemic really helped us align those lesson plans across a grade level. While we had curriculum maps, there was variation, and that's something that came to light to us that early March when we had to go remote because classes were in different places. So having these curriculum teams to develop these lessons, we had very clear student objectives and outcomes and what would happen, and we touched upon all the standards, so we didn't have to sort of skip any or condense. And now we have this wonderful set of curriculum for all subject areas that now it's allowing us to dig deeper into some of these other aspects, and that's really exciting. So it forced us to do that. It was hard. I mean, it was tricky. The teachers have done an amazing job. We had great guidance, great supports, but now we've got this great product that's allowing us to spend, our focus more on that data and that action. So that's exciting for us the year ahead.
And the teachers reported very quickly that no matter what classroom a first grader was in last year, those kiddos came to the table today and were able to say, I read that book, I had that lesson, I used those tools, and it was really exciting for the teachers to see that what the students had the year before was consistent. If you take 14 classrooms and sort of mix them up and regroup kiddos. So that was something that was a forced positive, and now people are seeing the wisdom of it and the need for it. So that's good to go forward with that.
And having those lessons, just to add one more thing, it really helped all of our support staff, ESOL teachers, special educators, paraprofessionals, support students, no matter which class they were in, because they knew the lesson. So no matter which of the 14 first grades you went, you were able to support those students right away. And it really helped students benefit from that support rather than working on different lessons or different, unit in other classes. So that was fabulous.
Any questions?
We could talk all night, but we know you've got other things to do.
It's great to hear what's happening in the schools. So thanks for that update, and it looks like a good plan.
I think if anyone can find the silver lining in the pandemic, it's you. It's good we talk so much about the loss of the pandemic and the scars, but you've shown us how much we've gained. We've been able to look at education through a different lens now.
Yes.
And deepen our practices, as you say. So thank you for bringing that note of buoyancy. Thank you.
I really, really like in your first goal the feedback loop that you're trying to implement. I think that's wonderful. I think it's such a hard thing to do, but if you get it going right, there's so much that the school districts will learn about what works.
Agreed, and that was something we had intended last year, and we just didn't get to it. We were trying to keep up, as Ann said, we hadn't done that before, so just trying to navigate schooling and these lessons and make sure we were there, moving our students forward. That we intended to do that, and we just didn't get to it, so we know how important that is, so that is why that absolutely remains in there.
And I think the other thing that I really enjoy is kind of reading about how discipline and it is being treated as a skill.
It is.
And,
So
and one of
we're-
the things that frustrated me when my kids
Yes.
were growing up was that, you know, kids were sort of expected to just know.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
they got punished if they didn't.
So we're trying to build that mental memory of what it is that you should do, because quite often, great job what? It was just the luck of the draw, they got in line, you know, but if they know, but if they know, this is what I do and this is what it looks like, and it's a teaching opportunity, not just assuming children know what to do. And often I would say to, you know, teachers, you know, come to the rug. Well, I could slide like I'm coming into home place. I came to the rug. You didn't tell me how to come to the rug, what it looks like, what it sounds like. So really spending the time on that then avails yourself to other things during the school day, because you're not constantly addressing, go back and walk, go back and, you know, that's not how we do it. You just learn how to do it and you know, and helping children make good choices and learn what that means and what it feels like, not for yourself, but also for others.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is great.
Yeah.
I'll just add, I loved the social justice standards. I spent a lot of time like reading. I love that that tool that you're using and the age appropriate sort of indicators for the different social justice, the 4 different social justice areas.
And that's feasible at our level, and that's sort of a heavy concept, and I know there can be a lot of weariness thinking, oh my goodness, is that something that you can do? Last year we had a first grader write a petition for the fair treatment of people with boots. So they could go on the monkey bars in the winter, because you're supposed to have sneakers, and it was very well written. It was wonderful, and I shared with her that the way she wrote it had me stop and think, and I checked with other people. You know, I explained what we do for safety, and we tried it out and piloted it, and it can work. You can wear boots on the monkey bars now.
Yeah.
You know, but that is an important lesson, and that's age appropriate. And how wonderful is that? Because she made a change.
Yeah, and that's, I really felt like that document that you referenced really, it was very age appropriate.
Mhm.
You know, I was curious about what you can do with K and 1 kids, and so it was great. And I love what you were talking about in the first goal too, about integrating the families, and because you know, so much. I mean, you get first kids who, you know, families who've never had a kid.
Yeah, we had some rocky starts today. It was the first day of kindergarten.
Yeah.
But we all get in, and within a few minutes, we're doing very well. So,
And
but
parents need
it's
help,
tricky.
too.
It's hard.
But I think last year we probably reached more parents than we had prior, as Lauren said. And with weekly updates from administrators, and we were working so hard to make sure that people felt connected and part of what was happening at school, and webinars, and you know, we all, I think every one of us had a webinar where hundreds of people attended. And it felt like, even though, again, it's sort of a silver lining, we were forced in this situation, and we found a way to reach everyone. Or maybe not everyone, you know, I'd hope that it was everyone, but lots more people than when you invite a group of folks into your gymnasium at 7 o'clock at night, when some families just can't make that work.
And I think some of our relationships with families actually strengthened because we were on a more personal level. As Shannon and I are trying to navigate the Zoom, they're saying, we can hear you. You can't see anybody on a webinar, so we're trying to talk to you. See, yes, you know, or chatting or whatnot. And they just knew that we're human too. You know, so having that understanding of we're all working to do the best for your child, for their learning and growing forward. It really, I think that another silver lining is just our relationships with parents have changed. We're greater partners now.
Well, and I would think at the ages that you both are working with, they're so young that families coming home at the end of the day, it really is a great way for them not to have childcare barriers and other barriers that make it hard for people to go out to attend things. I think, like Meg, I really appreciate the silver linings that you and I know others have found in this, but when you started the whole thing talking about how you were working on goals that would have been familiar, I think last year seems like such a blur in comparison. It doesn't feel comparable in any way. And I feel like from parents that I've heard from, and as well as my own children, that there's a collective sense of we're back to a more normal school year, even though we were fully in school in the spring. There's something that feels more normal right now.
I think there's a more positive energy, is what it felt like at Elmwood yesterday, and just sort of some relief, even though it isn't quite normal. There's a different kind of hope that we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It is
so much.
always a pleasure to have you here.
Yes,
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, hey, you're up.
Mrs. Bolello is like the middle child here coming up alone.
You know, we were talking, they mentioned connection and collaboration, and, you know, what I would say one of the biggest positives of the pandemic was really the collaboration the 5 of us have done. I would say that we're going on year 6 as a building leadership team, and I am so thankful for having my partners in leadership here. And I know we talk every year about how there's that progression from pre-K all the way up to Mr. Bishop's school. And I think if you look carefully at our school improvement plans, I would say this year, even more so than all the rest, the alignment going up is really tremendous. And it's very exciting to see that, because I think that's how you see real progress for children. So I have 2 goals this year. Our first goal, like my colleagues, is also social emotional learning. I almost broke this into 2 goals because we are so focused on both social justice and equity work as well as social emotional learning. However, I had this wonderful epiphany, I would say, as we were going through interviewing Carla Burley, who's our new social emotional learning director, and in the process of her interviews and doing model lessons, what she brought home to me was the fact that CASEL language, which we know is the heart of the social emotional learning work that's being done, and they focus on those 5 competencies and skills that we're looking to develop in students: the self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision making, all of those 5 areas, that equity work is embedded in it, and that it's really all tied together. And so in our goal this year, it's really about bringing home those 2 areas together in one umbrella and not trying to put them into separate holes. And I'm really excited about doing this work, and so this is really going to be a partnership, hopefully between us at Hopkins as building leaders with Carla, and also working with Jen Suker and hopefully Jen Carson more to do both the work we need to do as adults, social emotional learning, focusing on ourselves, our own biases, examining that and how to make it better for our students, but then also bringing that back home for the children, both at a school-wide level, and that's where that PBIS work really comes in. What do we set as our school-wide structures, and how do we keep improving those? And that's where we have a lot of work to do. Talking about what things sort of went away during the pandemic, those routines and structures, you heard my colleagues at Marathon and Elmwood talking about that, that's actually what we see kids struggling with. And we anticipated this, the social relationships were different. The ability to follow routines and self-manage, whether you're on a screen or in a classroom with only 10 kids, very different than what they need to do in our more typical classroom. So coming back to those school-wide structures is what we're really focusing on. And then the third level is further refining what do we do for the kids who those school-wide structures are not enough for, and how do we respond and adapt to meet those individual needs. So really 3 prongs, but all fit under that umbrella with weaving in our social justice work and seeing that these things don't live on their own, nor do they live outside of the curriculum. They live within our interactive read alouds. They live within our conversations with children. They live within what's happening in the lunchroom. And so whether you're teaching music class or you're a paraprofessional supervising students out at recess or in the lunchroom, or you're a classroom teacher teaching math, how do you weave in these skills like self-regulation? How do you weave in things like identity? And that's the work of our first goal here. So the second goal, I'm not going to read through all of these. I know you guys have access to it, and I know that our viewers at home can also read through it there or on our website. So my second goal, in the past, you'll remember that at Hopkins School, we would have a math goal, we would have a goal to looking at literacy. This year, the focus of this goal is broader, and it's really looking at instruction across the curricular areas, and not just in the academic areas, but really all the curricular areas, and looking at how we're providing choice, voice, and differentiation in instruction. And that's in everything from our art classroom, where we have teaching for artistic behavior, where students are really thinking and learning the skills of art and then thinking about how to individually choose what kind of art project they're doing, to a reading classroom where we sometimes will be doing guided reading, but we will also be immersed in book clubs, where you might be choosing a book that you can't decode or read the words on the page, but you're listening to the book and experiencing a heterogeneous group to have discussions about that, because it's a story that you're really interested in learning about and a culture you want to learn about. Other times we will be focusing on books that are in guided reading, where the students will really focus on learning comprehension skills at their level. So this goal is a little bit different because it really is to looking at ways that we can not only weave those social emotional learning skills into all of our curriculum, but differentiating instruction to meet the needs of each of our learners. And that's going to be done both based on data, formal data, right? Assessment information that we get on students, what do they need now? But also, asking questions of students, that kind of data. What are they interested in? Getting interest surveys back. In the math classroom, using our formative assessments, but also our beginning of unit assessments. Which kids already know these things, so how do we extend it further for them? What do we do to further differentiate and broaden the breadth of what we're doing for each individual learner? This was hard to do last year because, first of all, was split into hybrid groups, remote learners. It was really challenging to do a lot of group work and flexibly group students. We're excited to come back to that, using that information we have to give more options for students. And we think that this is going to further improve learning for all students, not just our struggling students, but every kid needs an opportunity to expand and deepen their learning. So I think that's it from my presentation. Open to ask any questions.
I love that social justice is a thread here. That's
Yeah, but the interactive read alouds that we have now through Fontes and Pinnell are outstanding and really do bring such great conversations. The book club books are phenomenal with that collection. They've been carefully vetted and really bring in diverse experiences. They've been very well vetted, and it's definitely going to deepen conversations. We started piloting them last year, and the teachers raved about some of the conversations they were able to have. And certainly in social studies, our work with outside consultants, we're seeing that has really become transformative. Our social studies is making huge gains in weaving in social justice. Civil rights is one of our fifth grade units, so it's big time.
that, and the way that you guys have aligned going through is, and I think I've said this a number of years in a row, but it's better each year. That it's years ago when we moved to town, the district was excellent, but it was more siloed between the schools. And now it feels like while there's distinct flavor between the schools, and I don't use the term loosely, but appropriate to developmental stages, you can see the progression.
And that's what I meant when I said this year, the challenges, it was certainly the most challenging year of our professional lives, but at the same time, I know having many more conversations with Anne and Alan in terms of how do we make sure kids move from third grade and then all the way up into middle school, and that's going to be work we're continuing, but I think we have a really great foundation for that work.
I think there's something you said that I wanted to dig into just a little bit because I really liked it, but I wasn't sure how it's being implemented. So you said, that there's, the kids coming back to the classroom in the typical classroom sort of behavior, but then there's the kids who can't quite integrate. And I was wondering if in that sphere of kids who can't quite do the traditional work, outside of the special needs students, are you considering kids who are, have trauma from the past year? Is that like a short-term thing? So are you thinking about how to weave them back into the classroom and like giving them a little bit of special extra time? Like, I was just really curious because it sounded like a really good thought to me.
Well, we've really been looking at ways, again, the interactive read-alouds we use, using picture books with 4th and 5th graders is really important, and there's great messaging in a lot of those, and so our morning meeting time, we have a base of responsive classroom, as you've heard over the years, but we're really now weaving in a lot more use of literature, talking about stories and using stories to help bridge that gap, to make connections to different cultures, different needs. And also using that idea of student voice and talking about their own experiences and identity as part of conversations in the classroom. That's huge. And building from that. And helping teachers see that they have those skill sets. A lot of times in the past, it was, we need to go back to the counselor. We need a counselor to help with kids or have a social group for kids. And making teachers recognize they have those skill sets themselves and they can do that work in their classroom. And if you do that work with everyone, you establish these as those norms, and then you backfill with needs for specific kids. So yes, it definitely starts, the heart of it is in the classroom. And the heart of it is getting all of our teachers on board. And day one this year, with our professional development, Carla Burley came in. She started and we talked about that. And the weaving between what she was doing, talking about social emotional learning, and weaving into our PBIS work that my whole social emotional learning team was presenting on day two. And also just reconnecting and collaborating was huge for our community.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm kind of gobbling up everything you say, especially because you're paying attention to that necessary skill of ear reading and not just eye reading. And so I love the emphasis on differentiated learning for all of the students. And I think having this being my 4th year, oh good Lord, I've seen as a team the 5 of you evolve in just such a magical way. You haven't grown apart, and the stresses of the past year would push many couples apart. But you've grown closer, and what you're doing is you're taking what used to be implicitly expected and understood, social cues, language about difference, and you're teaching it explicitly in all of the schools. And you're not making people feel shame for that explicit learning, which is so important right now. You know, yes, no, you can't say it that way. That's hurtful. So I feel so excited by what you're doing. Really excited and just very proud and honored to be witness to it. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the presentation. Wonderful job. I also like, similar to how it was presented for pre-K through 3rd grade, that you're focusing on social emotional learning, not just on students, that we have to teach them, but it's really the staff and the students. And Mrs. DeBow and Mrs. Carver went so far as to say staff, students, and families or parents. And I think that's really important. I think there's opportunities to reach out to families in general, but also in specifics to adjusting back from last year, for example. So much of what a student experiences may be from the tone that's set at school by the adults or set at home by the adults. And there's an opportunity, I think, for the schools to work with families to be explicit, as Meg said, about those expectations too. Not in a punitive way, but in a let's learn together the best environment that we can create in partnership for our children to feel that they have a safe environment for learning.
I totally agree. You know, in my Hawk Squawk newsletters that go out every other week, we focus on our core values of the month. And one of the big pieces of my newsletter is really providing resources for families on that theme of that month. So if we're talking about responsibility, those are the things I try to weave in there, with the hopes that we're bridging those family and school, community bonds, and then recognizing our students through Principals Cabinet each month who are exhibiting those core values. And so it's really about absolutely partnering with families on that large scale about what are the things that we value as a community and constantly emphasizing those.
Great.
I agree with all my colleagues. I'm so psyched that I have colleagues that are so eloquent, because I could never, Meg just says things so well. But the only thing I'd add is that what stuck out to me that has been mentioned is the 1 year's growth for all kids. And the idea of meeting kids where they are when they come into a unit, to the classroom. It's been a very varied year. And even if it hadn't been, kids are very different. And the idea that you've put in your school improvement plan, an intentional meeting kids where they are for a unit, for a topic, for whatever it is, and allowing them to grow and expecting them to grow, regardless of how they start. because that growth, obviously, it keeps kids engaged. You know, kids who come in already knowing, you know, whatever the unit might be in math or whatever, those extensions that really keep them engaged and allow them to grow make a huge difference. And kids who don't know that yet, you know, they need to have pacing that is accessible and deliveries that is accessible for them so that they can also grow. So I love that.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
thank you
I
for
think that idea of growth is really important, and kids get so stuck on a number. What is my number? But if they're focused on how much did I learn, how much did I grow, it's so much better messaging. And we as adults have to model that, because adults are probably the worst at that.
Yes.
We have fixed mindsets, and I was talking in the lunchroom today just about that today. So fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and grown-ups get stuck in fixed. So how do we shift?
Great.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Keller, nice to see you again.
This is like a night of celebration.
I know.
I just love it. Can you
celebrations or
guys come back
celebrations?
again?
I know, the first school committee meeting in a while where it's just
so
like
good.
happy positivity everywhere. It's awesome.
Well, thank you, everyone. I first want to acknowledge our school council, who did extensive work last year in preparing this. Unfortunately, all of our meetings were via Zoom, but nonetheless, people worked really hard on that. So first, I want to mention our students: Ash Sridhar, Dridi Nekalapidi, Lillian Glace, and Megan Capetta, as well as Aylin Flannery. Teachers: Jane Lassard, Shannon Knowles, and Rebecca Abate. And parents: Allison Murphy, Amy Cafazzo, Lee Burns, and community member Tejaswani Dalvi. So they did a lot of work on this and talking about what they saw as strengths of HMS as well as areas that we need to work on. So that is what a lot of what is embedded in our school improvement plan. The first goal is around social emotional learning and equity, and it really ties into what Vanessa was saying earlier. In the past, we used to have a social emotional learning goal as well as a diversity and equity goal, and it only makes sense after talking to Carla Burley, the new director of SEL, to bring these under that umbrella. And so we're excited to be able to kind of dig into this goal. At the end of last year, we did a bias survey that we sent out to all of our students, and we got a lot of information in that we began digging into over the summer. Chris Ocampo, our assistant principal, and Ben Bennick and I started looking at the information in there, and we have a lot of things that we're looking to improve upon in the coming year to work with our students. Years ago, we had an Anti-Defamation League group of students that were trained from the ADL, and that's one of the items in here is reestablishing the work of those peer groups from the ADL. It's one thing for us as adults to preach to students and talk to students about things. It has in my opinion, a much greater impact to have students talking to students about diversity and working with others and reaching a common understanding. So that's a really important piece that we're excited to bring back to the school. We also talked about making sure that we have improved and increased the mechanisms for reporting incidents of bias and discrimination. We have talked for years about come down to the office or come and talk to one of us, and certain students do that. But a lot of students don't feel comfortable leaving their classroom and walking down or speaking to a teacher. So that's one of our major goals, is to make it really easy to report incidents where something happens. Last year, you may be aware that we piloted a mental health literacy course for our students who were remote learning last year, and we did that with our 8th grade students. That was hugely successful. We had great feedback from parents, great feedback from students. And so we are bringing that into our health class this year for all grades 7 and 8 students. And that is something that we work with the high school on. And so grade 9 is going to have that mental health literacy course as well. And I already mentioned Carla Burley, our director of social emotional learning. And so we have met, I think, twice at this point, and are continuing to have meetings with her to talk about how we can look holistically at our school, because in the past we've done a lot of great things around social emotional learning, but a lot of it has just been individual bits and pieces. And so looking and doing a complete needs assessment for the school, connecting the work at our school with the work of the other schools to make sure that we have a consistent pre-K through 12 approach. And so that's another piece of this. And then assembling a social emotional learning team. So we've had a behavior support team, I think, that exists at all the schools, where we look at how we can support students in the classroom. And then we also want to establish a social emotional learning team that establishes tier 1 practices that will take place in the classroom for all students, because largely what we've been focusing on is the tier 2 and tier 3 stuff. So when a student is struggling, how we intervene and remediate, and we want to make sure that all classrooms in the middle school have those practices in place. So that's goal number 1. Our second goal is around curriculum and instruction. And so similar, I think, to what Lauren led with. So you'll see that some of the items on here are repeats from last year, and certain things that we just weren't able to because of some of the issues that you all know that we all were dealing with last year in the midst of a pandemic. So we established an 8th grade civics project last year, as did all 8th grades across the Commonwealth, given the revised curriculum frameworks. But that was kind of at I would say, a basic level, given what we were able to do with students last year. So we want to continue to expand that and push that more into the community. And so that's a big piece of what we want to do. Last year we began reviewing our curriculum, making recommendations to ensure that there is representation of all of our students. We talk a lot about windows and mirrors, making sure that students see themselves in the literature as well as see others in the literature and the textbooks. And both Anne and Vanessa talked about data. And I think now more than ever, as I think Anne stated, we need to make sure that we're looking really closely at data and seeing where students are and what they need based on the year that we had last year. Some students, I think, thrived in the environment that we had, and some students struggled. So really making sure that professional learning community meetings, the PLCs, which are really kind of at the heart of what we do at the middle school, are driven by data. So teachers are talking regularly about how students are performing, whether it be on the STAR assessment that we give 3 times a year in English and math, or on the assessments that that teachers are giving that are common between between the courses, and making sure that we're finding ways and learning from one another about how they're finding success in their classroom. And then the last piece on here in this goal is looking at our grades 6 through 8 curriculum. So Jen Parson and Deb Moriarty, Deb being our K through 6 ELA director, have been meeting regularly to talk about how we can refine our curriculum, aligning it, make sure it's aligned with the ELA frameworks. As you may remember, several years ago, we revamped our grade 6 curriculum, and so we're constantly looking at that and making sure it's meeting our students' needs. And lastly, our third goal is around growth. I think that everybody knows how much we've grown in terms of enrollment. And so at this point, we are out of classroom space at the middle school. All classrooms are currently being used, and we've had to go to 5 lunches this year, which is a wide swath of time to have the cafeteria occupied and have people in there staffing the cafeteria. So it's looking at all those spaces. Hallways are definitely a regular concern when we have that number of students in the hallways and lockers, and so just really kind of assessing where the needs are and making recommendations based off of that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. A lot going on there. I did not realize that a couple years ago when we spoke about space, there were still classrooms available because the preschool had moved out and room to grow. It's something I know we're looking at this.
Yeah, so we wound up with a former preschool space. We now have our intensive special needs classroom back there, and then we also have our START program, which is for our short-term transition program, and then Empower. I know Vanessa mentioned the Empower program, so our Empower program. So that space has been used up, and then as you will recall, coming into this year, we were able to get a social studies teacher that made us a 3rd complete team in the 7th grade. So now every classroom space is occupied.
Wow.
I want to thank you a lot, because one of the things that I've been hearing from a lot of parents of underrepresented communities is that they feel like their kids are getting bullied, but they don't fit the definition of bullying. So if they fill out the bullying form, that wouldn't get accepted, and of course the students are scared to report. And this effort, I think, is a huge step towards starting to really help that problem, which, I mean, it feels huge to me. Like this is a really, really good thing, and I really, really appreciate that you're doing it. I hope to hear that it's had good results at the end of the year, because it would be nice to see this implemented, you know, across the board.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm all weepy.
On the growth aspect, I mean, that's affecting all schools. I mean, so I'm glad to see that you put it in here directly, but I almost feel like that should be something that should be on the radar. I'm sure it's on the radar, if not specifically in the top 2 or 3 of each of these reports, but I like that you called that out specifically. Because there is a larger effort around campus planning, visioning, so I think that you'll be a part of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to pick up on that though, I think I remember Dr. Wagman's projections, and it seemed like, I mean, time is marching on, and maybe I'm not mentally marching with it, but I feel like the crunch was going to hit the middle school in a couple years. So to hear you say, I have to go back and look, but it seems like, yikes, maybe it came here sooner than we expected, because we were sort of watching the crunch hit marathon, and then you could sort of see, yikes, trouble, and then middle school was sort of down the line. But it's really great that you've got this on here, and you're trying to be as ahead of the problem as you can.
Yeah, I mean, even if the crunch is coming in a couple of years, this is the plan
It's
for the
great.
next 1 or 2 years to get there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you have 6 lunches or 7?
Right.
I
5 lunches, wow.
I love the mental health literacy course, and I do wish you would let me enroll, because I'm clearly behind the game on that one. But I think it's great, you know, especially in the wake of the 18 months everyone has had, just opportunity to have those conversations, and also very happy to hear about the tier 1 attention, because, you know, we're all so busy all the time that it's easier to respond once something happens, but to create a foundation of support and a community of adults who are listening keenly to the children's silent needs, I think it is just really wonderful. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I love the civics. You know, I know that civics was brought in statewide as a curriculum. I love that you're infusing that with some more energy and, you know, taking advantage of this time to grow it. I love that it was mentioned in Hopkins as well. Anytime that we're sort of applying some of these, you know, some of the SEL skills go into civics, some of the history knowledge, geography. I mean, sort of all of that stuff is really applied when you talk about civics, and I just love that that's part of the curriculum, that you're looking at it, and that we're starting it also earlier. So, nice.
5 lunches. And I know that you're also serving lunch in the auditorium, so that's a lot of lunch.
It is a lot of lunch.
The windows and mirrors, in terms of the curriculum and students seeing themselves and others in the literature, I think is great to hear. It's also something that came up when we were doing our listening tour this summer. And there were some complimenting that has been happening at different levels. It's great to see that it's, you know, working its way through in ways that will have a positive impact on our students. So thank you. It sounds like off to a good start this year.
Yeah.
Great start. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Bishop.
Always has to go last.
All right.
We have our handouts.
Hello, everyone. Hello. It's always nice to be able to go last. Cherry on top here. I always enjoy listening to my colleagues. They do such a wonderful job. Like many of them said, the alignment is, I think, special here. It's different. You don't see this in every district. I think it's what makes us a healthy district. It makes us a collaborative district. There's going to be a lot of similar themes in the high school improvement plan all the way down to marathon, which is really great. So we've had a great start. I do want to just comment on how wonderful the first week has been. We started with 2 just tremendous professional development days with the staff. The excitement level was palpable. It was really nice to be back in the building. And then the past 2 days with students there has just been wonderful. Our senior class got there at 6 a.m. in the parking lot, even though we kicked the start back to 8. So they were rearing to go. And you can just feel, I think Ann Carver said it earlier, you can just feel the positive energy in the building.
And it's wonderful to be a part of it. So it's nice. We're all a little bit tired right now. We were talking about that, to have this little 5-day weekend, but we're excited to get back to it next week. Certainly making some good strides so far. So very similar. Obviously, we had to put a pause on our school improvement plan goals over the last 18 months for obvious reasons. We still were able to make some progress on some of them, but many of the goals that we have here are very similar to the goals that we had in our prior school improvement plan. We're just kind of building on some of that. We talked about this at the beginning of the faculty meeting and again with students in the last 2 days, and I think it's important to mention, and it's been discussed throughout the course of this evening, we're not going to make any progress as a school on any of these goals until we kind of focus on what we're calling the 3 C's: our culture, our connections, and our community. And so we need to take some time to rebuild our culture. One thing about Hopkinton High School and Hopkinton in general, there's a special culture in that building. I noticed it from the second I started working there. Kids are in there all day long. They're there after school. There's just something about the vibe of the building. And everybody who applies for a job, we say that to them right away. So this is a special place. And I think it took a little bit of a hit in the last 18 months. I think with people in their classrooms with masks on, and culture isn't one of those things you flick a switch and it just, oh, we're back to being a positive culture again. We have to work at it. So we need to work at making those connections, building those relationships, and making sure everybody in our community feels valued. And so those are things that we're starting this year off with. So I walked through the hallways and heard teachers kind of putting the curriculum aside for a second and just connecting with kids, which is really nice. So those are overarching goals that we have to accomplish in order to accomplish any of our goals here on this improvement plan. I'd also like to thank our school council. We have 26 members, so I'm not going to list them all. It's a very large group, but they know who they are and they did a wonderful job in helping to prepare this improvement plan, especially the first goal, which I'll start with, which is our vision of the graduate. I know that we have talked about the vision of the graduate before. I look at this as kind of a culmination of the work of the lower levels and the admin teams and the teachers. And we've talked, I think Vanessa talked about the CASEL competencies. You'll see a lot of those in this vision of the graduate work that we have. And it's really just about establishing the habits of success, those transferable skills and dispositions we want our kids to possess when they graduate from Hopkinton High School. Not necessarily the content knowledge. That's obviously embedded into what we do, but this is kind of those other skills we want our students to possess. And we started this work back in 2018 when NEAS came for their collaborative conference visit. So we do have our decennial NEAS visit this December. So they come every 10 years and give us kind of an evaluation on how we're doing. And part of their recommendation for us was to develop this vision of the graduate. It's a 4-year process, so we won't have it done by the time they visit. We are in year 3 of 4 years. So the first year we developed, and I think I passed out that paper there that you have, we developed the competencies. And you'll see some CASEL language from growth mindset, self-management, social awareness. We also talked about effective communication. We have self-efficacy, critical thinking. Those are the 6 that we came to, but there was a lot of different topics that we brought up. We had information from community members. We talked about this a lot in our school council. We've had students be part of these conversations, so certainly a lot of voices have been part of the development of the competencies. This past year, even though we were on Zoom for our school council meetings, we made tremendous progress in coming up with the descriptors, which is those definitions under each one of those competencies. So what does a Hiller possess with growth mindset? And what does that mean for a student, right? So those are some things we need to educate the students on. So this year, it's more focused on coming up with a way to measure the student growth when it comes to these competencies. So that's big work in this 4-year process. We will look to kind of look at our curriculum. Our SMLs will be a big part of that, and how we're going to embed some of this, or how are we already embedding it into our curriculum. A lot of this stuff is already kind of happening within the curriculum, but we're going to look for areas throughout the course of the year that we can fit in some of these competencies. School council is really going to work together to come up with an evidence collection tool for the students. So we're talking right now maybe a portfolio. We haven't settled on that yet, but something where students can put some information together on all of these different competencies and present that at the end of their 4 years of high school before they graduate, which we're really excited about. And so that's the work this year. So we developed the competencies, came up with the descriptors, how we're going to measure it this year, and then next year it's rolling it out with the incoming 9th grade class. And so that's kind of the 4-year process. So there'll be a lot of work this year and then a lot of communication of that incoming 9th grade class about how it's going to work. So that's our first goal. Our second goal, and again, you've seen this throughout the course of the evening, is our goal around social emotional learning and our continued commitment to investing in the social emotional health and well-being of our students. We're really focused on helping students try to find that balance. We have a lot within our social emotional learning goal. So like others have talked about, we're going to be working very closely with Carla Burley She's coming to our department head meeting on Wednesday and a faculty meeting the following Monday to meet staff. And we're just going to talk about how she's going to be able to kind of assess what we're doing. We've done a lot of SEL things at the high school, as you know, but we need to dig a little bit deeper within the classroom level and that tier 1 strategies. So that's really the work that she's going to be helping us with this year, which we're excited about. Also within this goal is a lot of our work around DEI. In the different clubs and organizations that are happening around DEI. We're really looking to get more student voice in our DEI group. We had a great, Mr. Ocampo and Ms. Tice at the high school came together with a bunch of teachers at both levels and developed a really strong DEI team to get off the ground. Next level is bringing the students involved into that. So we're excited about that work. We're also going to be working with, like Mr. Keller said, the Mental Health Collaborative, and we're going to be introducing the mental health curriculum, the understanding and awareness of mental health needs in our 9th grade. We had some summer work that Carson put together with our wellness department. So they've been trained in the summer. They're going to be the group that's going to be putting this together for our students. So that'll be happening shortly. In terms of where it fits in the curriculum, probably be somewhere in the fall. We're looking forward to putting that in. So that's a big part of this goal as well. I know I came in the summer to talk about our flex block. We're excited about that. So our next goal within the social emotional learning is helping students kind of have that agency, that voice and choice in their learning and how they spend their time. And the final piece of this goal is around continuing to improve the transitions from 8th to 9th grade. I think last year we did a really nice job. We brought 8th grade teachers together with 9th grade teachers to talk about the different learning profiles, to talk about placements. And I think I'm already seeing the benefits of that work that we did last year already this year. So I think we got to continue that work, which I think is really important. So, and then the third goal is around, and you've seen this as well, disciplinary literacy, and helping kind of grow literacy skills at the high school. Now, this has been work that's been happening at the district level for quite some time, and it's kind of making its way up to the high school level. I guess simply put with this goal, we're really looking to increase the frequency and volume of targeted reading and writing across the different disciplines. Really looking to kind of merge content knowledge and experience and skills with the ability to read, write, and think critically in a meaningful way within the context of that discipline. We're looking to measure that through a variety of different ways. Obviously, we'll use the STAR reading that Mr. Keller mentioned that we use at the high school as well. We'll do some locally based assessments and created rubrics, as well as the MCAS. And I think you probably are aware that the newer MCAS, the older MCAS was more formulaic when it came to the short and long comp. The 2.0 version is a little bit more, you need to make more meaning of text, especially 1 or 2 texts when you're looking to do that. So we need to kind of focus on that. We feel like this goal will hopefully accomplish that, and we'll be able to see greater gains in our scores when it comes to the MCAS. So we have been meeting with, throughout the course of the end of last year, as well as through the summer, with SMLs in our English, social sciences, and history departments, as well as science. So that's where we're going to start with this work. So they've been meeting to talk about alignment, when we're going to be offering these opportunities, and how it's going to connect, working on rubrics together. And the hope is after this year, then we kind of introduce it to the rest of the department. So it's kind of a 2-year goal when it comes to the disciplinary literacy at the high school. So obviously a ton of other things we're working on, but those are our 3 main stated goals for the upcoming school year.
So I love this. I adore this. Like, as a professional who employs people and has to read their resumes and determine their value based on their resumes, this is a resume, right? So instead of, I mean, obviously a university will judge a kid still on A's, B's, C's, and whatever, but the kid can have this to give a holistic view of who they are, and maybe even, sway opinions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Based on this holistic view of them. I love this. It's awesome. Thank you so much for showing it to us.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from a number defines a student.
Yeah, exactly.
This idea of a GPA is that's who you are, and you're supposed to go to this school based on that GPA. You're far more than a number.
If I'm reading a resume, I'm looking for critical thinking skills. I'm looking at projects that showed me things like critical thinking skills. I'm looking at things like effective communication. It's super important, right, in almost any job you ever do. So this, to me, this not only is a great way to proceed, it's also very real world, So this is really nice. Thanks.
Agreed. I would add too, I like that some of your efforts have been multi-year efforts, and you mentioned this vision of the graduate will be introduced to the 9th grade class next year. What about the 10th, 11th, 12th grade? I mean, will they be somehow introduced as well, or have they been all along?
Yeah, they've been introduced to it, and teachers have assessments that connect directly to some of these, especially in some specific disciplines.
Mhm.
But the 9th grade class will be the first group that will be collecting evidence to put in some type of portfolio.
Okay.
So the current students at the high school have been helping us develop this. They know about this, it's on our walls at the school, they're very aware of the different competencies, but that's the group we're gonna kind of figure out how we're gonna measure it and collect it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And similarly, on the mental health literacy, that'll be introduced to the 9th grade class. Is there opportunity for the other grades on that note as well?
So right now it is set up for a 6th lesson for the 9th grade class. We'll see how that goes. We'll continue to work with the Mental Health Collaborative, and it'd be lovely if we could expand that to other grades. So yeah, there are we talk about mental health awareness in all 4 grades in our wellness department.
Excellent, okay.
But this is kind of a curriculum that's coming in from the outside that we think could be beneficial for our kids.
Good, thank you.
I think it's your turn. I get to go. Yeah, I agree. I love the vision of the graduate work. I think, it's just super motivational. I think I just love having that, these set of competencies put together. I mean, if you have this, then you can go out and solve the climate crisis. And you can go out, you can do all the things that the world is demanding of our kids if you're equipped with these skills. So I echo Leah. I mean, I think these are great. Great. I haven't really totally digested the, what did you call them? The 5 details underneath
The
each
descriptors.
one. The descriptors.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, things like, the communication, et cetera, which kind of links in with your disciplinary literacy, which I also really like. Being able to read and write and communicate in your discipline effectively is huge. And, I have a son who's an engineering student, and he has to take writing for engineering, or whatever it was called. And I was like, what's writing for engineering? It's just writing, right? And then I talked to him about the class, and and I was like, okay, what do I know? But it was amazing to me how important and how specific the style, the voice, the word choice, the structure, everything is unique to that discipline. Much more so than I intuitively understood. So I really appreciate that we're bringing this into the high school. It's great and all good.
Love the disciplinary literacy for all the reasons Amanda just said. And I was thinking when our star students performed earlier, that was real disciplinary literacy. That notebook, which had nothing to do with paragraph formation, right? So it was brilliant. And I do love this too. I sent my daughter to a school that wasn't really a school. I apologize for not sending her to you. But she graduated by writing an essay about how she would contribute effectively to society as an adult. That was the basis of whether or not she got that degree. And I think this really is that. But it would be interesting to see at the end what the students make of this kind of indoctrination. I'm always so curious to see what pieces of the puzzle they've put together after all these years of us offering to them. But thank you for everything, as always.
So I don't have a lot that would be more eloquent than what my colleagues have said. I do love the 3 C's and that you're starting from that point. And I do love how things weave and recognize the pre-K up to where you are is building blocks that really we're fortunate to have such quality schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've heard great things about the start of the high school this year too.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah. Nice to be back.
And it looks great too, the new wing.
It does.
Oh.
We're giving away the
next part of the next season.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I know it's been a long.
Come
long
again
day.
before next year.
You guys are the highlight of what we do.
Oh, yes, so we do need Mr. Bishop and Mr. Keller, I think, for other, why don't we take those, you can come right back up. In this, you want to do your handbook?
Yes, this will be really easy and quick. So a number of years ago, we did a pretty large handbook revamp, and so we really have not made many changes, if any, for this upcoming school year. Just kind of procedural stuff. We changed the end of the semester date We added the new student council officers, and then we took out the COVID language that was in there for last year. Other than that, there has not been any changes to the high school handbook.
Okay, so, any questions about the handbook?
No.
So why don't we go ahead and, we have to go back and vote the school improvement plans, but why don't we start with the handbook since Mr. Bishop's sitting up here? Is there a motion that?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Motion by Meg, a second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then I would, while Mr. Keller gets ready to come back up, if we want to go ahead and take a motion for the school improvement plans to accept them.
Oh, yes, so moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second.
second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
also have to do the district improvement plan. Do you want to wait on that? I know you've seen
Okay,
it before.
we did see it and we did not vote on it. Is that, do we want to?
I don't know if you'd rather.
Yeah, why don't we,
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
do we,
Let's do the stipends.
I just didn't want it to slip out.
it slipped off my radar. I'm glad you said that.
Handbook.
Sorry, go
Okay.
right
No,
ahead.
that's okay. So I have two advisor / stipend changes that I wanted to bring forth. So we had a math counts club last year, and it went very well. It was just kind of the initial phase. We had a teacher that was willing to take it on and did a great job with it. Unfortunately, by the time we joined, it was too late to actually compete. But generated enough excitement in the middle school that we want to move forward with that. We have not run science fair in a couple of years. We've had kind of limited participation in that. So we'd like to take the stipend that was designated for science fair and move it into math counts and have a math counts club this year. Shall I do both or just one at a time?
Why don't we do one at a time so
Sure.
I don't miss one and come back to it?
Yeah.
So is there a motion on the math counts?
Yes. Wait, sorry, was this, I'm
Oh,
coughing
that's
here.
okay.
Was
So-
this the 257s or was that the other one?
This is the math counts, it says 500 on it.
500, okay.
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Go right ahead, please.
How do you determine the amounts of the stipends? I mean, these are two different positions, but one is quite different rate than the other.
So generally speaking, clubs have all been $500.
Yeah.
And I believe if I remember correctly, that there is a group that's looking at stipends now. But for the most part, the after-school clubs that meet once a week for about an hour have been $500. So then there's and I think generally speaking, we kind of look at the number of hours that go into it. And so, things like the drama club where there's extensive hours that go into that, or like morning homework duty where it's every single day. So we look kind of at an hourly approach with that.
Yeah, but then the other one that you'll tell us about is a different rate than 500, right?
Yes.
Is that
And
based on less hours?
I think
or-
that's exclusively because two people wanted to do it, if I remember correctly. I think that's why I was coming in at $250 each for a total of
Okay.
500.
Okay, thanks. Just curious.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I
the
made a
math counts,
motion to.
motion
Yes.
by Meg to approve the math counts for 2021-22. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the math counts is all set.
Thank
The
you.
next one I see here is the diversity club, which
Yes.
we touched on a minute ago.
So we did not run peer tutoring last year. That was a program that was started, I think, about 5 years ago, and a teacher 2 years ago decided that she didn't want to continue with that program, and so we had a teacher that picked it up last year, but we did not get anybody interested in running it this year. And so we do have a diversity club started last year. And that was highly successful, and so we would like to initiate and have a permanent place for a diversity club. And there were 2 staff members interested in running it, and so the idea there would be that they each earn $250 for a total of $500 for a diversity club.
So moved.
Okay, so
Second.
motion by Leah, second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So that is, thank you very much for
You're
all of
welcome.
that.
Thank you.
And I see Dr. Kavanaugh is right. We do need to go back to the district improvement plan. And was that, we just failed to vote on it?
That is correct, yes. So you've reviewed the entire
We-
thing?
right.
Yep.
Okay, so the district improvement plan that we reviewed at our last meeting, is there a motion to accept that? Any questions?
I think the district improvement plan, rolls up everything we've just heard. So I will definitely make a motion to approve it. I think it works well for us.
I will second that.
Okay, so a motion by Amanda, a second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that passes. And then that brings us, there's nothing else we needed to move out of order, correct? I'm not missing
I
anything.
don't think so.
All right, so then why don't we go back? Oh, thank you all. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
No, I think they need to
Watch it
sleep.
from home. Yes, please,
First
please
time in a
sleep.
week.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice long weekend.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So then that brings us back, let's go back to the superintendent's report so we get back on track there.
All right, so this should be a brief superintendent's report. You'll see an update on the high school project, a little bit of information on transportation, and then some student enrollment data. So just quickly, the picture that you see on the front, those are from yesterday, students getting off the bus at the Elmwood School. It was a pretty exciting event. Quickly on enrollment, it's not so greatly changed since the last time you have seen it. I think the last time you looked at it, we were at a positive 80, where you're now at a net gain of 83, so just 3 more students. I think we did have more students enrolled, but we did have a few families that have left us to homeschool. I think just, given, some concerns I think about coming back into the building, while kids who are under 12 and not yet vaccinated. All right, just quickly on the Hopkinton High School addition, this comes right from the contractor's report. The scheduled target completion is the 3rd week of September, and there may be a few little, punch list items after that, but we are hoping, and maybe Mrs. Rodman can help me out with this, what do you think will be prepared for occupancy in the 3rd week of September, 4th week of September?
A lot of it does depend on the inspections, but there's no indication that would be troublesome.
The site work is going to start next week, and they'll start removing the scaffolding sort of immediately. You'll see in some of these pictures that they've already started that. The site work is expected to also be completed by the 3rd week in September, and then while they're doing that work on the exterior of the building, we don't expect that there'll be any interruptions to the use of the bus parking lot. All right, just a few, really quick pictures here. All of the exterior windows have now been installed, and you can see that they've started to take off some of the scaffolding in that picture on the left. The brick installation is now complete, which is great because that was one of those things that was, kind of taking us a little bit of time. The main entrance steel canopy is installed, and obviously that'll be roofed just to match all of the other existing entrances of the high school. You now get to see some of the interior pictures, and so, really what you're seeing there now looks just like a classroom. So on the right-hand side, that 2nd floor classroom might have a couple of little things to do. Some of the window sills, window trim, window shades, you'll see that, you might need to touch up paint in a few places. The stairwell has been reopened, it's looking good, and and I think we're finally in the home stretch on this project, which is pretty wonderful. We had questions about transportation, and I wanted to just make sure that people knew, some of the dates and deadlines that go with transportation. So on March 1st every year, we open invoicing, which means you can enroll your student in busing and, pay for busing for the year if you are a parent of a student in grades 6 to 12. And that continues on until May 1st. And then between May 2nd and May 30, you can still pay, but when you pay after May 1st, there is an applied late fee. Even when you get to July, parents can still pay for busing, but at that point in time, you may be put on a wait list. And it really does work in kind of a rolling basis. So even if you are on that wait list, you might be, immediately put on a bus depending upon availability. Now, lots of times people will then be looking for busing changes, and so from the 2-week period prior to the start of school until 2 weeks after the start of school, there's a bit of a moratorium on busing changes, and that's just because, we need to get those lists out to the buildings, and they can't continue to be changing, or what happens on day 1 is that we have kids, all mixed up in terms of the buses that they're riding. Now, that said, we really do try to expedite those changes on a rolling basis if we can handle it with, opening day and with kids on buses. So, we try to accommodate families the very best that we can, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. And this year, there's a little bit of a change when families have a concern about bus stops. What we used to do is we used to have one day, and on that day we would have, you know, the SROs and, you know, all the transportation people and, you know, the superintendent. We would all sit in a room and we would review all of the appeals on one day. But now we're going to do that sort of on a rolling basis as well. So if someone had emailed us a couple of days before school started and said, I'm just a little bit concerned about where that bus is stopping, you know, we would have reviewed that, and maybe the bus stops, you know, 50 yards down the street, and maybe we have a logical explanation as to why it's stopping where it is. But we are working with families on that on an individual basis. And I did put that little banner up at the top because I wanted to remind people that masking on buses is federally mandated this year. And we have had a couple of parents who have said, you know, I'm hearing from my child that, you know, kids may not be wearing those masks sort of with fidelity on the school bus, and we really want that to happen. So this is really just something that I want to impress upon families. Please help your kids to understand that they've got to wear the mask on the school bus. The windows will be down. There's really good cross ventilation. You know, the air exchange is amazing on the school bus. And that's why I think, you know, federally they've said we can fill our school buses because, you know, they believe that the risk is highly mitigated. But it's not mitigated if children aren't wearing those masks. So. And that's all I have for you.
Can you just comment quickly on the transportation? Because I was involved in the policy review a couple of years ago, and so I've had like little insight into how complex transportation is. So, you know, I just wanted to first of all say thank you. However, we got all our drivers. I know there are districts that don't even have enough drivers. So I'm so grateful that we have drivers in all of our buses, and you know, it's the little things. You know, and I think it's huge. There are, you know, there's a huge shortage. So thank you for that, and thank you for changing that process on the appeals. I think to make it rolling. I don't know if people realize. I mean, there are a lot of eyes that go on those appeals. I mean, you bring in the SRO. I mean, there's police. There's you. There, you know, there's a whole team looking at bus stop appeals, and I know that's a lot of hours for people who are already busy. So I appreciate the effort that's going in to try to take them on a rolling basis. Yes, it's huge.
Yeah, I want to agree with that because I know that a few years ago there were parents who hadn't realized the date. And so they wanted the bus stop moved, and it was past the date because it was kind of early in the year, and there was a lot of concern and tension around that. So it's really nice to see the rolling a piece of that now. So thank you. Thank you for presenting about it.
Just question, it comes to me, have you seen a significant increase in the number of kids seeking bus transportation this year compared to last year?
Well, to give you an idea, the registration, the number of students is about 3,900. We're transporting 3,00,000.
Wow, that's great.
That's great
that
for
is
the
great.
environment.
It is, it's right.
Sure.
And traffic and everything.
Super.
Great, thank you.
Another question on transportation, how has it gone given the Main Street project work this week?
You know, so far, you know, the first couple of days of busing, especially, well, at all levels. The first couple of days of busing always takes longer. But when I asked the drivers if the construction really is what was getting in the way, and the answer was actually no, it was actually students getting in their own way.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Getting accustomed to the routine of getting
Yeah,
on.
I mean, they have to, you know, kids don't, we had several kids at the middle school, high school level who just got on the bus they rode last year.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Wrong bus.
Sure.
Or they would come down and say, I live at X, what bus am I on?
Yeah.
You know,
Excellent. Well,
things like that.
that's good, because there was a lot of concern about Main Street, so glad to hear that at least the first couple days
So
was
far.
not an issue, but let's stay on it.
So far.
Yeah.
That's great, just to have 2 runs instead of 3.
Yeah, and that piece seems like it's working out okay?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like I said, the first couple of days, you know, the kids are really getting in their own way, you know, and that'll get there.
I have heard anecdotally about difficulty kids are having with figuring out the routine because they weren't on the buses last year with the swipe cards and figuring out the
A lot
whole.
of changes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, just like the principals have said, you know, kids have not done school in a very long time. And they have not done busing for even longer, because even with the buses, when we ran them last year, we were running at 50% capacity. So it's very different. So we're looking at busing as it was 2 years ago. And that's very different for a lot of kids. Nobody remembers 2 years ago.
I'm not sure I remember 2 years ago.
Fair.
So, and that's it for you.
That is it, yes, thank you.
So I had a couple of things. First, just to thank people who were able to go to the IBB training or the Youth Commission Ice Cream Social. We had a very packed week last week, so appreciate everybody in the Youth Commission for putting the Ice Cream Social together. I know I don't know the exact number of families, but it felt comparable to what it would have been pre-pandemic. So that was great. I did have a couple of people reach out to me since the last meeting. A couple of people who had reached out about transportation, who I directed to you because they're really into your department, not just you specifically, but because they're really more operational in nature. And also I had a number of people who reached out who were either very pleased with our decision about masking and a couple who were not quite so pleased. But so that was, and then there were some comments related to the policies that I will save for the policy. And then that said, I got to scroll back up because I did have some warrants in there. So warrant 22-006 has been approved and is included in your packet, as well as payroll S22005 also approved and in your packet. Are there any liaison reports that people have that they want to share?
I found out the Sustainable Green Committee meets the week after next, so I'll attend that meeting and provide an update after that.
All right, I expect that probably we're all going to get more of our liaison stuff moving now that we're into the year. So that we're going to, since we already did the new business related to the school improvement plans, the handbook, and the advisor changes, that brings us down to the HTA, Hopkinton Teachers Association Memorandum of Agreement.
Sure, just very quickly, prior to the start of school, we engaged in some impact bargaining with the Hopkinton Teachers Association, really just looking at, some of the working conditions that would exist when we began school in the fall. And we have arrived at successful negotiations with them. And they have ratified the MOA on their end. And so I am looking for you to vote to approve the MOA with the Hopkinton Teachers Association, Units A and C for the 21-22 school year.
I make a motion to approve the MOA.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Meg, a second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Great. So that is passed with many thanks to our
Yes.
HTA partners for working with us collaboratively on that. That brings us down to item F, which is the paraprofessional position at Hopkins.
Sure. So this comes from Dr. Zaleski and also from Mrs. Bolello. They are requesting an ABA special education paraprofessional for the Hopkins School. Specifically, they need this hire because we've had a student who has moved into the district who has this level of support in that student's IEP. And the position will be funded through the FY22 operating budget by increasing circuit breaker funds to offset the tuition costs. So the total cost for this position is $34,913, and I think it's a position that we absolutely need to service the student.
Absolutely. I make a motion to approve the hiring of a paraprofessional.
And I second.
So motion by Meg, a second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? So that also passes, and thank you to Dr. Zaleski for looking out for all of our kiddos and making sure they're getting what they need. So that brings us to item G, which is the establishment of a capital reserve.
Yeah, so as you know, we belong to the Accept Education Collaborative. And prior to this, they have not had a capital reserve, so they are hoping to establish that. And the purpose of that would really be to, support costs associated with, something capital that either came up or it could be something that's planned. But at this point in time, they are looking to have a balance of $1 million held in reserve. And what they need for each of the school committees who are part of that collaborative to do is to vote yes or no on this. And they need a 2/3 vote of all of the member districts to be able to have this pass. And so I am recommending that we allow them to establish a capital reserve fund.
So, can I ask a question about this? How are they funding the capital reserve fund? How will we each be donating a certain amount of money into the collaborative fund? Like, how is the
I
capital-
believe that there'll be a surplus, but if there isn't, and you probably have a better answer to this than I do, but I believe that if there isn't a surplus, each member district would have to contribute.
Yeah, and actually, we, the business officials are meeting on this next week.
Okay.
So I think we'll get more details on things such as that next week.
Okay. So this is just voting for the fund, not how we're going to add money to the fund.
Right, I think you're just voting to establish the fund at this
Okay.
point in time.
So just to be very clear, right now, this is not costing us any incremental money.
Correct, it would not.
That's what
And
you're
if-
Yeah,
So
I want to be really clear too,
Right.
because it sounds, there's room for space between what's being said, and I want to make sure that if we're voting to, that the accept have a balance of $1 million, and you're not meeting till next week to know whether that they're there yet or not, if we vote for that, how can that have any authority unless that money exists?
So, well, I think to the point that Dr. Kavanaugh said, there are years where there is a surplus. So the policy could be that the surplus would then be put into establishing a fund, which is not an unusual funding mechanism.
Okay.
But, so if there was money required from the member districts, would that come back to us to authorize the transfer of however much they need per member district? Or is that?
They would increase the assessment, but at this time, they're not looking at it that way.
So typically, if there is an excess of funds at the end of the year, do they roll that back to the member districts proportionally?
It would be a reduction in the assessment.
And so is that something that we?
We don't count on a reduction in
Right.
the assessment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our budget for this coming year wasn't assuming anything, we don't normally assume any kind of rebate, so to speak.
No, we don't count on a rebate.
And I believe that there's also a ceiling that they can keep from year to year, and so they either have to spend it or give it back to districts.
And how many member districts are there?
Oh, I don't know if I know that answer off the top of my head.
It's in the 20s.
There are a lot of districts.
Yeah.
Just wondering if you take $1 million, just roughly divided by, is it 4 districts or, 20?
I would like to make a motion to approve, except to create a capital reserve fund.
A motion by Meg, is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Do you support this, Susan? I mean, do you want us, do you support this?
Yeah, I think it's, if you don't do it this way, it becomes part of your assessment anyway. So either way, you have to pay for the capital that they need to do. Sometimes it's a replacement of vehicles, as a, for instance, from a very simple way of looking at it.
And then do member districts, do you vote on expenditures of the shared budget? Like, do you have a voice in how that, like when, say, a replacement vehicle is purchased?
The superintendents
Yes, we do.
vote the budget.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to be clear on how that works.
Thank you.
And when we talk about, vehicles, for example, with Accept, right now they have, a whole fleet of vans. But of course, they're not really using them because they are having difficulty hiring drivers. But, if you think about it in terms of a collaborative, Hopkinton is a part owner of those, so to speak.
So we have a motion and a second, so I would ask all those in favor to say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, so that passes. Thank you for bringing
Thank
that forward. And that brings us down to school committee norms, which this is a follow-up from our initial conversation where we had taken the MASC document, and we had taken what we liked and changed a few things, so Georgette had helped me tremendously by watching the recording, and then I worked on it a little bit. Is that actually in our packet, or is that something I need to share?
It's in the packet.
Oh, is it? It's in the PDF for the school committee agenda.
Yeah, because
that
I
has all
think
the
there was
extra
stuff that
in it.
Page 97.
changed.
In the PDF.
Oh, no, it is in here. But, okay. So are there places in here, in the highlighted pieces that maybe we weren't entirely sure that we had captured it accurately, but are there things in here that feel like we have missed or that we have not quite captured correctly? I know the one thing that had been important to a couple people was to talk about not striving for homogeneity, but for solutions to the matter at hand. That is in there in number 8. I don't know if the way I have worded that captures exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah, I like this. I looked at all the yellow areas, which I guess were areas that maybe we discussed or revised, or they all seem good. And I think this is, from my perspective, a huge improvement over what we had before as a school committee. I think it more represents what we actually want to be doing. So it actually represents our beliefs and norms.
I think it was a good exercise to kind of reboot.
Yeah.
And to look at what we were
Come
doing.
into it.
So if there are not any changes that people want to make for this, does somebody want to make a motion to actually approve this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so a motion to approve the school committee norms for 2021 to 22 made by Meg. Is there
Second.
a second by Joe? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that passes, and because the packet is so big, I have to scroll way up to the top.
It's been a while since we've
Well,
had
look at
that
all those footnotes,
113
too,
page.
Okay, so that brings us down to policy EBCFA face coverings. This is a first reading. Do you want me just to share some of the feedback we received, or do you want to review the policy and then get the feedback?
You could do that, that'd be great.
So there was one person who had sent us an email, and I think everybody was copied on that, but I just, for the people at home, want to share that there are some highly efficient masks that should be cleaned according to the manufacturer's instructions and not necessarily in a washer or dryer. So that was one piece. Another piece was a question about a specific gaiter type mask, because that we have not, in our previous iteration of this, we did not allow gaiters. This mask sounds a little bit different, but I don't know how we want to address that in there. And then the other comment had to do with making sure there were face masks on the school buses.
Okay. So the policy working group met, and what we did was we took last year's policy and we made amendments to it based on the current state of public education, given that the commissioner has said that everyone will be wearing masks until October 1st. Afterward, the MIAA came out with some information, so I independently added that for your review. Very simple things that we put in here: stop the spread of the coronavirus and its variants. We included the MIAA. We looked at face covering requirements will be reviewed at intervals throughout the 21-22 school year or until this policy is revised or rescinded. We added in the second paragraph, during athletics as recommended by the MIAA unless locally overridden by a vote of the school committee. So what we're really saying is we'll follow MIAA unless we decide that there's something different that should be happening for Hopkinton. We talked about a disposable 3-ply mask or better, or a multi-layered cloth mask, and kept all of the language around that from last year. If you go to the second page, we took out social distancing. As we know, the commissioner has said there's no more social distancing that's enforced in schools. You know, he encourages people to remain 3 feet apart, but social distancing in and of itself is not a requirement. We added the sentence, exceptions apply to teachers or staff working in the building alone. That was this whole sentence was there before, and we just took out the last part of that. And I think those are the very sort of simple changes that we've made so that it reflects current conditions.
Can I ask a question?
Mm.
Do we know where the science is on gaiters? Is it a
I was
matter,
gonna wonder.
is it a question of the number of layers of fabric? Or, I only ask because I think some kids find them comfortable, and they also, I mean, in terms of like when you have a mask break or lunch, you're not taking it off and putting it down and mixing it up with somebody else's or losing it. So I just wasn't sure if we knew where the science is on that. Or if that's what was driving our policy before.
Well, my understanding with gaiters was it was a singular piece of fabric, which is why we disallowed them last year. So I do not know if the technology around gaiters has changed.
It was the single, and it was that some of the particular fabrics, my recollection was actually made things.
Spraying more.
They
spray more.
Yep. Yeah.
So-
Are there compliant gaiters? Or
We
is
did
it
have the gator that was specific to that,
the person who wrote
that
it?
had the medical mask inside. It
Yeah,
had-
this was definitely something that we were discussing. I mean, so on the one hand, like, how would you tell which gator is which, right? And so you allow them, and then you end up with a lot of single-ply gators, and that could be a real issue.
We're not really
Same
looking
is
at
true.
fabric masks.
But that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, but then the same concern happens with the fabric masks.
Do we want to get some consultation on this before we?
Yes.
Just before we
Sure.
make a
On the
decision on the
gators,
gators?
yeah.
Gators, I think that would be good.
Talk
Just
to some medical professionals.
I did like what the person who wrote to us had suggested for the being able to be
Yeah.
laundered and machine dried or cleaned in accordance with the manufacturer's
Manufacturer
instructions.
instructions,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was
I
great.
think that's a good
Without,
addition.
yeah, without the change,
We'll add that.
the image or change.
Is there a demand for clarity on this policy today? I mean, how will you operate if we delay approving this today?
I don't think it's a problem if you delay
Yeah.
approving it today, because we're all wearing masks until October 1st.
Yeah.
And we have, as a school community have implemented MIAA, and, obviously we had to implement the commissioner's requirement.
My recollection from last year was there were school districts that did not have a school committee policy in it. I liked that we're
Yes.
having a school committee policy in it, but it would seem like there would be a way to, manage that between now and when we.
I think the sentences we're looking at are where it says the Hopkins Public Schools will not allow neck gaiters, bandanas, or masks with an exhalation valve, and discretion regarding mask efficacy will be left to building administrators. It sounds like we're talking about maybe reconsidering those two sentences.
at least the gators.
The
Yeah.
gators.
Well, if we're deferring to health professionals on whether gaiters are effective, that does kind of affect the second sentence too,
Yeah.
where we
Yeah.
had previously left discretion on efficacy
Right.
to the
Oh,
building
true.
administrator.
It's only a first reading.
It's right.
So we can,
So I would want to know, because bandanas are going to have a similar issue.
Yeah.
That they have to fall within the multi-layers anyway.
Yeah, something like that.
But
yeah.
if the style of the gaiter is inherently safe or unsafe.
Right, yep.
Research shows that a polyester neck gaiter blocks 47% as a single layer. I'm looking at a scientific article.
Well, and of course, the understanding of the science is very different now than it was a year ago.
Yes.
there was a minor grammatical thing that I wasn't sure. I'll defer to those who know more. But I think it was just the placement of as federally mandated in the second paragraph. I think it was, and on school transportation as federally mandated, modifying school transportation. But it seemed like maybe it was modifying the whole
sentence. I just want to be clear on, so as face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings and on school transportation as federally mandated. When I first read it, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't think it's federally mandated that you wear, so I just wondering if there's a way to maybe, with punctuation or something.
We can take out the and take out the comma.
Or we could say, and as federally mandated on school transportation, maybe?
Yeah.
I
We
don't know,
could
just-
have, we
yeah,
could have
that's a good
in-school
point.
buildings, on-school transportation as federally mandated, and during athletics as recommended by the MIA.
I think it's the comma
So
after
it's the comma.
transportation.
I think it's the comma, yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, I just saw a place where we need a comma, so.
Well, let's use
I
that
do too.
comma and put it somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
And we really don't have to say as federally, I mean, we're saying it because it's not our choice, but we could take it out as well.
Good reminder.
I mean, unless we were going to say only until it is no longer federally mandated. I mean, what we're saying is this is our policy and we'll change it when we change it. So unless we're somehow going to react to changes in federal mandate, then we might not need it.
But if you say that the high school no longer has to wear masks, they will on buses.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if the federal mandate changes, we could perhaps.
I think it's good to have
Review.
the as federally mandated in there, but without the comma before it.
Yes, I agree.
So in terms of the way we had set this up prior to the Board of Ed coming in and coming up with a state mandate, we had agreed to review this at our next meeting. Do we expect by the next meeting that, and this may be a little bit of trying to read the future, but that the state will have given any additional guidance for what's going to happen?
When's our next meeting?
The 23rd, and the October 1 is their.
I think that's touch and go.
I bet by September 29th.
Certainly not the
Yes.
24th. So worth having the discussion on the 23rd, but we may not be in a position to vote anything at all if we don't know what the state is going to do.
Yes.
Yep.
We're used to that.
Okay, well, thank you for our policy working group. You guys continue to work tirelessly. It seems like it's going to slow down, and then it doesn't. So we will, again, I have to scroll way back up. I think that, I hate to say this out loud, but I think we're ahead of schedule by a little bit. And that actually will give us time to review your goals. Sure. Which we had thought we might not be able to get to if we were running behind.
So you have in the packet 4 goals, and I have added an additional one, which I'll explain when we get to the end. This is really the second reading of these goals. The first one was back in August on the 19th. And so I won't spend a lot of time going through each thing because I've already done that once for the community, but the first goal is really to take a look at student learning data and ensure that that student learning data is driving instruction. And I think you heard that in all of the school improvement plans this evening as well. We are in a place where we think that our building principals, instructional leaders, classroom teachers, special education learning specialists, all of those folks really have to have the data to drive instructional choices. Now, I think the efficacy of our instruction this year can really be driven by data. And, in past years, we may have had, some of that, I guess, a little more leeway. But if we really know what kids need, we can target the instruction. And so there are 7 key process benchmarks for that. Star reading, which is, something that we use K to 10 as a, kind of an online, nationally normed test. And then you see other things there that, will sort of, get us to that place where we understand that, we're looking at student profiles and QRI data and BAS data and all of that. And so we start to look at our data for patterns, for trends, and we set goals for students, especially kids who are either not reading primarily or performing in content areas at grade level. So this really is a student learning goal, and it's targeted, I think, at helping all learners, but certainly our struggling learners. Professional practice goals, goal number 2, just getting our district toward greater proficiency in diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice, and anti-racism. You know that we have been doing this work for a very, very long time. The last sentence in here indicates that I'm hoping to also grow our CPAC and LPAC, and that, that would be, I think, really nice for our parents to feel more connected to our school community. You heard a lot of these tonight, but I'm excited about the protocol for responding to incidents of bias or hate. That's a really, phenomenal thing that Chris Ocampo and Laura Tice have started, and sort of related to the DEI teams at the middle school and high school. We do have DEI curriculum now in every school, as Mr. Bishop was talking about doing his new Human Identities course for grade 9 students. We have aligned ourselves frequently with the Hopkinton Freedom Team. We are in the process of revising the bullying prevention intervention document, just to sort of take a look at some of the highlights under that one. The third one is, as we all know, to address enrollment growth and then really think about building use, building expansion, and coming up with a plan really to look at all of our campuses across the district and to see what's working and what's not working and what we need for our physical plants and other space throughout the district. And you can see that I'll be working with the Director of Finance and Operations, the Director of Facilities, the Elementary School Building Committee 2, the Mass School Building Authority, and most importantly, really the community, to just make sure that we are always having that kind of ongoing dialogue. The fourth one is to grow the administrative team to improve communication, unity, and ultimately student learning experiences. I feel like, even though we have been, as we learned tonight, a group that's been together for 6 years, I feel like as Mr. Bishop might have said, there's a kind of a dismantling, I think, that happens as a result of the pandemic. So just sort of bringing us all back, maybe, physically, emotionally, socially, all of those things, in addition to all of the professional work that we do. And this is the new one, which was just recently added. As you know, the district improvement plan has a social emotional goal. We have hired a social emotional learning director, and all 5 of the plans you saw tonight have a social emotional learning goal. So I thought it prudent to add one for myself. So my 5th goal is stated to begin the process of defining SEL for Hopkinton such that social emotional learning competencies are taught at Tier 1, supporting the whole child and the child's access to learning. And I think we heard a lot tonight about some of the things that we've been doing, but not necessarily getting in at that Tier 1 place where the social emotional learning competencies are really taught in the classroom alongside just regular lessons. So how do we embed those competencies in a math lesson, for example? And so if you just take a look at my process benchmarks, we will start by identifying and distributing to our administrators and the teachers equity-aligned social emotional learning competencies. And I think the equity-aligned piece is where, we're kind of talking a lot about how the diversity, equity, inclusion kind of dovetails with social emotional competencies. The SEL director will be conducting an SEL asset and growth assessment across the district, going into each building, really figuring out what we're doing well, where there may be gaps, and when we identify those gaps, we'll need to fill them as identified. And then the 4th one is, in collaboration with the SEL director, we'll begin to build the capacity of the Hopkinton Public Schools educators to embed SEL competencies across content areas, ensuring that social emotional learning competencies help students access learning in all content areas. And I think that's the really important piece of SEL. We can give kids lots of these strategies, but unless they are sort of using them to access curriculum, to self-advocate in terms of what kind of a learner am I, what kind of a learner do I want to be, and really being able to sort of drive their own academic goals by the time they are at the high school level. So some of the products, there will be a social emotional learning competencies and skill document. There'll be professional development scope and sequence that you could look at, which will indicate how we're rolling that out to educators. We will be embedding the competencies into our curriculum maps, at least in the first year in ELA, hopefully. Tools and resources for schools. We have the SEL 3 signature practices for adults. And I think that was already rolled out to the Hopkins educators on the very first day, and it was really nice to sort of see our new SEL director kind of dip her toe in the pool. There are 3 SEL signature practices for the classroom. So the adult ones and the classroom ones, you know, we started to look at. She has a really nice portrait of an SEL learner document that we will be kind of sharing with folks, and it's probably not so dissimilar from Mr. Bishop's vision document here. And then we will have communication to all school administrators at the end of the first year, a district-aligned vision for SEL. So we'll be working on all of those angles, and then hopefully there'll be something that's really concrete by the time we get to June. You can see that those are attached to the superintendent's rubric in a lot of ways, under instructional leadership, under sharing responsibility, a commitment to high standards, and then having a shared vision. And then finally, it's also tied to the current strategic objective document. It's aligned under enhanced community and classroom capacity for kindness, respect, compassion, and service to others, growing social emotional competencies in curricula in all buildings, as well as ensure support staffing is ample to meet students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs. SEL director, the hiring of an SEL director, and the hiring of a .6 social worker and school adjustment counselor. So that's the additional goal that has not yet been considered.
I do too. I also feel like we've heard so much tonight about Carla Burley. I feel like
I know, we have to
I
bring her in.
would like to have her so
She's
we
like
can
the
meet
woman
her.
of mystery now.
But she sounds phenomenal, really.
She's great, yes.
So I want to touch on a few points in goal 2 that I'm really happy to see. So first of all, you know, I've been talking about how kids need support right now. I think your plan to have a mentor protege program is a really great way to introduce immediate support to kids who might feel isolated. I really hope to see that progress throughout the year because that sounds really, really good to me. At the same time, I hope I'm interpreting affinity groups right. I'm really glad if it is what I think it is, which is, you know, where teachers of different underrepresented groups can get together and have discussions and, you know, allies can come in and stuff like that. Happens in my work. It's really great peer support, and seeing it happen early while you're trying to diversify the staff, I think is really nice. Like, instead of playing catch up, you're creating the structure that needs to be in place so that people don't feel isolated on coming into the district. So I really think that's really, really good too. And of course the protocol, which I'm overwhelmed by this. I don't know why, but it's just really nice to see it happening. And the restorative practices and restorative justice. I like, between those things, I'm seeing such a really nice kind of closing the loop on a lot of different aspects and supporting students and teachers in a really great way. So I'm really happy to see this.
Oh, thank you.
And I know we've seen all these except the SEO one, the newest one. Are there other questions, comments about these, or any other indicators that people had hoped to see? Are we ready to?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, I like the specific about growing the administrative team. We have a great team, we heard from earlier tonight, and I think it's great that you're planning to meet with each principal once a week. I think that too can help with those over time, the transitions and sharing best practices across schools.
We are very fortunate in Hopkinton to have had such a consistent leadership team and same principals for, what did somebody said, 6 years now they've all been together.
Yes, yes. And a couple of them are principals who have been here, well, 3 of them I think have been here a very, very long time. Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, it I think
Good
really
stability, yeah.
the stability
And
has
the
really helped
willingness
us.
to learn and continually develop, yeah. That's all I have.
Those look great. I like the addition of the new one. We already talked about the other ones before, but I think, I echo everything Leah said. I think they look great.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Please, please.
I make a motion to approve Dr. Kavanaugh's goals for the 21-22 school year.
I will second that.
So a motion by Amanda, a second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I know that these take a lot, that you put a lot into all this, so.
And at some point, we'll have to talk about indicators.
Next, yeah.
In terms of future agenda items?
Indicators.
Oh, yes, indicators. Anything beyond indicators? There are a couple that we have that are still in the queue from things that have come up that have to be brought back, but are there others?
I think this will happen anyway, but even if we're not in a position to know what the state's doing with masking on the 23rd, we do still want to hear a
Yes.
report on any cases, transmissions, any
Oh,
data
yes,
that we want to
absolutely.
see.
And that brings us then to items by consensus.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Meg, second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous, and that brings us down to adjournment.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Motion, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, at 8:54. Yes.
Which is a little ahead of schedule, so
It's
this is
very
nice.
ahead. Well done.
There is a second on that?
Second.
Motion by Meg, a second by Leah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and so we are adjourned at 8:55. Our next meeting is a regular meeting on September 23rd. I assume that will take place here unless otherwise noted. So, thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Nancy.